So again, good morning on my part. Today I wanted to talk to you a bit about semiotics of nature, which, as Eli briefly mentioned, includes biosemiotics, soil semiotics, and ecosemiotics. But I will not go very deeply into that. What my point is to just briefly introduce you the notion that semiotics does not deal only with cultural phenomena, that semiotics is not only something that pertains to human culture and human cultural phenomena, or what you maybe think of semiotics as dealing with language, theater, literature, but it also means that semiotics is something inherent to life, that all living beings are embedded in meaningful connections. They make meaning of their environment, and semiosis as such is actually started with life. However, we do tend to divide semiotics into three different branches in a sense. So to say, semiotics of biology, which deals with interorganismal aspects, soil semiotics, which deals with animal communication or animal meaning making, and ecosemiotics, which deals with animals and their environment. So here are listed some research areas that semiotics of nature asks about. So elementary mechanisms of semiosis, what is the threshold of semiosis, evolution of semiosis, how it has developed, modeling animal-specific, species-specific Umwelten or life worlds, so what the animal is capable of perceiving and acting upon. Then animal communication, how do they encode the messages, how do they transmit the messages, how do they decode the messages, and ecosystems as sign relation networks, so animals' own agencies in relating to the environment. This is too much to go into in this short mini lecture. So what I decided to do is just give you a brief overview of the topics that interest me. And I'm mostly interested in how animals are represented, how their or whether their agencies are taken into account, and how their agencies play a part in how they're represented, how we perceive them, and how this actually also influences their lives. So the first example, I think that all of you have seen on TV or on Netflix some TV series about werewolves. Werewolves, how do they live? How do they act? They are usually a pack of werewolves, and they usually have an alpha leader. A leader who is an alpha, male or a female, it doesn't matter nowadays. And there's a very strong hierarchy there. And if anybody wants to take over the leading position, they basically have to call out the leader, fight the leader for the alpha position. And where does this perception come from that these werewolves have this hierarchy? Is actually from zoological gardens, where they used to hold together wolves from different families who didn't know each other. They were put in the same enclosure, usually from the same sex. And what happened then is that they formed hierarchies. They did fight, and there was always an alpha and always an omega. However, this is not the natural way that wolves live. In reality, wolves or wolf pack, so to say, consists of a mother, a father, and their offspring of 2 years. So there is no such a hierarchy which has been shown to us in TV shows, or which used to be true in zoo enclosures. But this is just a small aspect, how to say that how we have perceived the animals and how we have managed their lives have made their way into this cultural realm and extrapolated there and put down roots, and how we think about how we think about wolves or wolf packs. Even more, even nowadays, a lot of people raise their dogs in a way that the person who is the dog owner has to be the alpha or seen by the dog as an alpha, which is incorrect way of doing it, which comes from this perception or misperception and representation of wolves in zoological gardens. Another example how our cultural constructs influence the ways that we perceive animals is cartoons. Probably again, you have seen or at least heard of cartoons such as Finding Nemo or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or Ratatouille. And the cartoons in themselves are nice in that sense. The animals in there are heavily anthropomorphized, but it doesn't bring about a problem in its own. But the whole ordeal is about that after these cartoons came out, the pet industry basically took a turn, in a sense that, for example, after Finding Nemo, these clownfishes or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, tortoises, and Ratatouille rats were much more wanted as pets. So there was a lot of demand for these pets. But what happened after a very short time was that these pets were returned. A lot of them were returned or freed or abandoned. And there's again a very good reason which the semiotics of nature deals with, researching why do these things happen. And the reason behind it can be explained in a way that even though these animals in cartoons are heavily anthropomorphized, we still get this kind of idea of what the animal might be like. We imagine the animals, and it doesn't even matter if you're a grown-up or a child, that this brings out a certain kind of imagined animal, and not only an imagined animal, but also we imagine the relationship that we could have with this animal. So this imagined relationship, but this imagined relationship obviously is not real because it doesn't take into account the animal's own agencies. The clownfish, the rats, nor the tortoises behave or communicate in the way that they do in the cartoons. And what happens if this real relationship with the named animals do not coincide with the imagined relationship, then obviously this kind of abandonment happens. Again, some sort of, not a very good example, a sad example, but the semiotics of nature can help you understand the underlying mechanisms of what happens to our relationships with real animals if we look at how these relationships are portrayed in our culture. And a third example comes from conservation. So here we have two logos. One is World Wildlife Fund, and the other one is European Endangered Species Program. And what the problem here is, it's not with the logos, but what they represent. They represent charismatic mammals. And in our everyday understanding, it is very common that when people are asked to name 3 to 5 animals, if you think about 3 to 5 animals, then most of us think about mammals. We do not think about amphibians, we do not think about invertebrate species, we rarely think about birds, but mostly we think about mammals. And there's a good biological reason behind it. It's because we are ourselves are mammals. So we have the most overlap in our communication, our, so to say, Umwelten or self-worlds, the way that we perceive the world and the way that we are able to act in the world. We have the most common with mammals. So there is nothing wrong about that. But what is the problem here is that this species bias, so to say, has crept into conservation efforts. Most of the conservation campaigns revolve around mammals and to a lesser extent birds. But the mammals are not the most endangered taxonomic group at all. the most endangered taxonomic group by far is cycads, followed by amphibians, who do not get the attention that they deserve. And it's only because of this biological bias that we have as mammals ourselves. So these were just a couple of examples, definitely not going into very deep. It was a bit hectic because when I went to full screen, I lost all my notes, had to give it by heart, and I'm very awful at doing that. I would just like to leave you with some topics that have done in the field of nature, of semiotics of nature. I keep calling it semiotics of nature because I don't want to frighten you away with soil semiotics, biosemiotics, and ecosemiotics. But so these are a couple of topics that people have been dealing with and defending their thesis on. And I think that I am done. So if you have any questions or comments, or if you want me to elaborate on anything, then please feel free to do that.